So this is quite new to me because I actually presented this paper last year at a conference for the British Association for the Study of Religion. And it's quite refreshing actually to present this study in front of Sikhs. And I'm very happy that we've got Sikh students here as well, because one of the slides actually I think you guys will find really interesting. So this picture was taken on Southall protest following the murder of Blair Peach and Gurdeep Singh Jaggar. Now, if you guys don't know this story, I believe there was a documentary last year on Channel 4 called Defiance, the Fight Against the Far Right, something like that. But I'd encourage you guys to all look at that. So that picture was taken in 1976. Where are we now in present day? So while starting my interviews in May 2024, all I thought about was I'd speak about my research, ask people about what decolonization is, ask people about what their Sikh identity means. But yet here I am acknowledging the links between racism in the 1970s and 2025. When my parents and elders in the community talked to me about extreme violence behind racism, I convinced myself that it was a distant past, not an implication for me. Yet here we are in a world in which brown and black bodies are visibly targeted, not in the subvert ways in which I will talk to you about today, but in very physical and aggressive ways. So, what happens when you type in Sikh to a Google search? This is what happens. So, when we go to Google, we type in Sikh, we go to news, this is what we're faced with. So these are pictures with languages such as separatism, Khalistan, and extremism, right? So all these pictures kind of demonstrate in ways in which Sikhs have been misrepresented, stereotyped, portrayed as the other. And when doing research with Sikhs, one must be aware of these implications. Some of these articles reflect on assassination attempts in California, in Canada, Sikhs fearing for their safety in the UK. This critique of Khalistan, why Sikhs are calling for a separate homeland in India as well. And again, similar images here as well, but I'll draw you to the one on the right of your screen and the one on the bottom left of your screen as well. So this one on the bottom left is talking about microaggressions, right? So a woman who's on a Eurostar train wearing a kirpan, other people mentioning, we don't feel comfortable with this. How can we articulate to the wider public about what articles of faith are, despite them being recognized in British law, despite Sikhs being puppeted as a martial race by the British government? They're ignored, fall on deaf ears. And most funnily, ironically, this is not the funniest picture actually of this presentation. We have somebody being confused for another Sikh, and I'm sure our Labour MP was very angry about this. So, like I said, that wasn't the funniest picture of this presentation. This might be high contender. And I can see some of the reactions in the audience, right? So, this picture, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this picture, but last year, the University of Birmingham held a London on campus event. And the university decided it would be a great idea to label it as Discover Islam Week. Now, let's be fair to the university. What also was happening during this week? Islam Week, right? Come on guys, people in turbans, they must be Muslims, right? So, what I want to draw your attention to is what some of the implications from the media can have. So those pictures that I spent the first two slides weren't to critique any sort of articulation of rights or to talk about Khalistan or talk about extremism or anything like that. It points towards what some of the risks are to Sikhs from the research, from the articulations that we have in the media, right? So Kim Knott points towards Sikh academics in the 1980s and 1990s questioning the motivations of Western scholars in their studying of quote-unquote religion, leading to debates into who could understand and represent Sikh traditions, There was critiques towards Western writers for their kind of historical Western approach to studying Sikhi, in which the Sikh tradition was translated to Sikhism. And obviously this picture in itself, in February 2024, the University of Birmingham were misrepresented and misappropriated a London on campus event as an Islamic event. My participants have said that there had been a sort of ignorance towards Asian identities. There's some sort of ignorance that all Asians are sort of the same and that we don't hold separate identities. This was seen a lot during the London on campus event because even though we had turbans on the social media posts and clearly labelled as a Sikh society, the university admin team still labelled us as an Islamic society. This was a big error and we were quite angry about this because we tried to push the London on campus event to help the community, to help spread the message of Sikhi, but for the institution itself to make such a huge mistake was quite offensive for us. It stems from schools, from how people are taught about Sikhi, as we heard about earlier today. They are taught in a very passive way, learning from a book. So this textbook approach to studying religion is challenged by accounts into lived religion, which we'll kind of get into later. Now, another contender for funniest picture in this presentation. You're not able to see this bar, but it's basically a meme that says most academics agree that you shouldn't cite Wikipedia as a source of writing. Just bear this in mind a little bit whilst we talk about our great friend Colin Bloom, who is a former government advisor, published a paper in 2023, and Bloom's report titled "Does Government Do God?" dwells extensively into the issue of Sikh extremism. Although there was a lack of definition of what extremist activity actually means, there's no exploration between the differences between Sikh extremism, quote unquote, and different faith extremism or state extremism, for example, right? So this report draws boundaries between Sikh extremists and those who follow a quote unquote conventional peaceful religion. Probably people that look like me, and one now that's not wearing at the start, right? So within the report, there seems to be an objectification of non-Christian communities as make-believers, meaning those who are motivated by nothing more than ego, money, prestige, or power. So that was an article by Vishal Sangu, who articulately better kind of ripped apart this report way better than I will. So the report kind of indicates that there was a division caused, there's some so-called division caused between the Sikh kind of community, between those who support the quote-unquote fringe ideology within the pro-Khalistan movement, a separatist movement seeking to create a sovereign homeland for Sikhs in the Punjab region, stating that subversive, aggressive and sectarian actions of the pro-Khalistani activists should not be tolerated. So that was a direct quote from Colin Bloom's report. However, the report references Wikipedia and doesn't directly consider lived experiences of Sikhs in Britain. The report does make a distinction between supporting Khalistan and that promoting cause for statehood doesn't necessarily have to be subversive. However, puts a boundary between legitimate activism and those who incite violence and intimidation, without clear distinction or understanding between both. Jasjeet Singh's exploration into Sikh identity brings about a critique that extremism as a term is applied to represent the support of terrorist groups and entities. It's often a value judgment without definition, and this report, I think, is a clear indication of what exactly is happening there. And we move on into some of the implications that happen from the government. Now, when West Midlands Police raided the home of in 2020, 3 British-born Sikh men were arrested and transported to London to face extradition due to an alleged murder of a senior RSS member that took place more than a decade before. So these men had never been investigated before, and this murder had already had trials in India, and all of those people that had trials had been acquitted. So what was happening? The extradition trial was in the midst of the ongoing farmers' protests in 2020, and so seen by the Sikh community as a desperate attempt to silence human rights activists in the UK at the time. During the trial, District Judge Michael Snow questioned why Priti Patel, at the time, in December 2020 and certified extradition requests and ordered the judge to issue arrest warrants. So the Sikh community has seen this as a collusion between the Indian and British government directly. In 2020, Sikh activists gathered outside the Indian High Commission following the murder of a prominent Sikh leader in Canada. The Canadian Prime Minister at the time, Justin Trudeau, commented that his government were looking at credible allegations linking the government agents with the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar on Canadian soil. So that's Indian government agents linking in with the murder of this. So at the same time, Sikh activists were calling for a separate inquest at the death of Avtar Singh Kunda in the UK. Sikh activists in the UK, we saw an article on this earlier, were fearful of their own lives due to the implications of government collusion and foreign intervention. So this is where British citizens were scared of their lives, with many Sikhs being fearful that some of the campaigns of challenging oppression within India were being cracked down. So this leads to many Sikhs actually being conscious when they're approached by researchers or stakeholders in government, media, highlighting the need to actually centre participant experiences. So that's where my kind of methodology comes in, where I looked at a kind of lived religion approach to look at this intersection between religion and the themes my participants mention. And these themes are in my study, where I look at how contemporary British Sikhs are decolonising their identity. Some of these themes briefly are reclaiming Sikh history and identity, so I won't read those quotes out, but you guys can read them basically. The role of education, challenging colonial representation and stereotypes, political activism, that's not necessarily just about Khalistan, intergenerational trauma serving as knowledge, so talking about partition, talking about 1984, talking about that as history basically, media representation and how Sikhs have been engaging in decolonisation. So Sikhs are kind of reclaiming their identity through understanding their identity through family, understanding their intersections through Punjabi language and culture, as we've kind of said as well. Participant 9 in particular highlights the fact that rediscovering identity is a continual process and understands their heritage being revealed through family. Intriguingly mentioning the surname Singh and Gaud being given to their parents. Participant 3 talks about Punjabi identity being Sikh identity, right? This is really, really interesting, where they're relying on this emphasis of being Punjabi as being Sikh, right? And then participant 8 talks about, there's this psychological effect from the British Raj and partition, that the first step to decolonisation is recognizing that, we were colonial, we were colonized, right? And then within Sikh studies itself, Bhupinder Singh Bogle reconciles with the displacement of the term Sikhi in favour for the term Sikhism. And also we could kind of talk about oral stories and oral traditions that cement this identity through storytelling and remembering. So these are the foundations of indigenous knowledge. So this transmitted to us daily through katha, through our grandparents, right, who talk to us daily about our history, about our stories, So by advocating for storytelling as a knowledge system, we start to understand decolonisation as systemic change, right? And just before I end, I'm still recruiting for my project as well. So I'm about halfway with what interviews that I want to have done. So I was aiming for about 30. I'm at about 13. I think I'll probably stop around 20 because we had this earlier conversation of when is it you're having the same narratives, you just call it a day, right? So I think a few more interviews and I'll be okay. But if anyone is interested, just talk to me after. Or my email was at the first slide, I think. And that's my sources. That's it.